Good evening. I call to order the business meeting of the Cave Creek Unified School District Governing Board, number 93. It's Monday, July 11th, 2022, and it's 6 o'clock. Item 1.2, roll call. All 5 board members are present. Members Brown and Walker are present telephonically. Cabinet members present are Dr. Monroe, Dr. Jensen, Ms. Nancy Diab-Scott, Dr. Frank Hendrickson, and Ms. Marcy Rodriguez. 1.3, formal adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I want to pull out 5.5. Thank you.
Okay. All right, there's a motion to amend the agenda as presented by pulling out 5.5. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as amended. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. The agenda is adopted as amended. Item 1.4, call to fill out forms for call to the public. Ms. Scotto, okay, there are no forms. Item 1.5, Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1.6, President's Report. The only thing I have is that I'm planning on attending the Wednesday event at Kiwanis, which is being held from 9 to 11, and the kids can dunk their principal. They have some snacks, I guess, and the public can bring school supplies. So that's it for me. Item 1.7, board comments.
Well, you beat me to it. I'm going to be at the Kiwanis event as well on Wednesday.
I would be at the Kiwanis, but I'm already starting back at work, so I can't do that, but I'm going to try and be there at the new teacher orientation. That'll be the following week.
Member Brown, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I made a quick stop by the job fair that Dr. Hendrickson and the HR department was holding last week on the 7th, and just to come by and say hi and to thank them for putting on the fair, and I hope we had some good candidates come from that.
Thank you. Member Walker, did you have anything?
I actually was fortunate enough to join the 8th grade and some 9th graders on the Spanish trip to Spain last month, I was very impressed at how well the students knew all the history that they had been taught at every visit that we made. So Senor DeVore did a great job, and it was impressive to see the kids put their Spanish to work and know so much about the history.
Thank you, board members. Item 1.8, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Monroe.
President Hatcher, members of the board. Well, I think today you could definitely feel the excitement building for the new year. Lots of employee groups returned to work today, including our stellar leaders, and so all refreshed and ready to go. And you can start to see it building here for 3 weeks out. As Member Fortney mentioned, our new teacher orientation begins next week as we welcome new teachers to the district. The Educational Services Department has a full agenda for these educators for everything CCUSD. Right now we have a little more than 60 new teachers that will be there, and that seems to be growing every day as the HR is definitely in the hiring mode. On that note, as Member Brown mentioned, the HR department under Dr. Hendrickson held another in-person job fair on July 7th. Although the harvest wasn't completely a plenty, if you will, every hire counts. And so whether it's certified, classified, I appreciate all the efforts that our directors, our principals, Dr. Hendrickson and the HR department on keeping their eye on the prize. We're still hiring. We have 2.5, 3 weeks to go. And we're looking for very creative ways to put great people in front of our students. As President Hatcher mentioned and Member Busby, on Wednesdays our Kiwanis Marketplace CCUSD Day. From 9 to 11, please stop by, join the fun, dunk a principal. There's a great sales at Kiwanis, popcorn, ice cream. I believe our Sonoran Trails cheerleaders will be there. Administration will be there interacting with members of the public. There'll be a school supply drive. We'll be registering students, and Dr. Hendrickson will be on hand to talk to interested individuals about working for CCUSD. CCUEF, our educational foundation, on September 11th will have their first ever Golf the District at Tatum Ranch Golf Club, and information can be found on the CCUEF website, ccuef.org, under events. I've been told that this is the first attempt at a golf tournament by CCUEF. We're very grateful for all of their efforts that benefit our students, our teachers, and our schools. On that note, also the board is probably aware of a new program called Outfit the District. You can see the theme with the district. This is an ongoing event that CCUEF is doing kind of in the spirit of our community, going back to the roots of having depots where businesses, nonprofits, individuals can donate school supplies to help offset the cost of school supplies that parents may be paying, or that our teachers use their own money to pay for the schools. So we're excited to see how this turns out. This is a brand new program. And just a few last things. August 1st is our first day of school. And in the next 2 weeks, we'll have bookstore days. We'll have open houses. There'll be a lot of excitement to return to school. And we were just notified today that our Cactus Shadows High School Spirit Line won 2 gold medals for both of their routines in the summer program that they're a part of. So they continue to excel. Finally, I want to invite Mrs. Zivchek, Kelly Zivchek, up to the microphone. Mrs. Zivchek is our new principal at DSA. And when the board approved her, I believe 2 meetings ago, I think she was probably in her car driving across country with stuff from Ohio to relocate here. So I wanted to give Kelly a few minutes to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Monroe. Can everyone hear me okay?
Is it on?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe?
Just speak real close.
There you go. That's easier. All right, good evening, everyone. Like Dr. Monroe said, when I was board approved in June, I was not able to be here. I was in the process of packing and doing a big journey and adventure to Arizona. So I'm just very excited and thankful for this opportunity to lead in Cave Creek Unified School District. I'm very excited as I've met most of my staff today, and I will meet some of them tomorrow in my one-on-one meetings with all my teachers. And I will say that everyone I've met so far has just been so positive and so welcoming. So I just wanted to thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mrs. Zivchek. So it's Zivchek. When you look at her last name,
Or Mrs. Z is fine.
Mrs. Z. There you go. Thank you, Kelly. And that's the superintendent's report, President Hatcher.
Well, welcome, and welcome to the desert. You're experiencing the full blow, aren't you? Yeah. All righty. Number 2, presentation of awards for schools and departments. There are none. Number 3, call to public. There are none. 4, presentation information reports. 4.1, superintendent district goals and discussion, presented by Dr. Court Monroe.
President Hatcher, members of the board, the purpose of bringing this draft starter document was to get input from the board on the temperature and the direction of some of these goals. I used this template for this discussion simply to show that this is a draft and that the district superintendent goals would be aligned with the strategic plan. It wouldn't necessarily come out on this template. But I wanted to reiterate, I kind of have 10 points that I want to tell the board, and then I'd like to hear the board's input on some of these goals. First of all, as I mentioned, this is a starter document. If you remember the pro statement for the override, we brought you a sample statement, kind of a starter, and then we kind of beat it up and went through it together. That's the intention on this document as well. Are we headed in the right direction? Are we valuing the same things? Are we getting to our priorities of the strategic plan? So trying to get the board's input, direction, and temperature. Second, I want to let the board know that I have been able to coordinate, communicate, and look at board and superintendent goals from Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, Deer Valley. I've also looked at the language of my contract with regards to superintendent and district goals. The idea is to align these goals with our strategic plan. It's to show vertical alignment all the way around the organization. So if you remember, Dr. Jensen showed a cool graphic that I should have brought where you have kind of the umbrella of the district superintendent goals, and the goals filter down vertically through our cabinet, through our principals and directors, and down to our teacher departments. And so the idea is that we're all rowing in the same direction and that the goals become vertically aligned. So we're not focusing on 100 things, but we're focusing on 20 things to do really well. The fourth thing, I'd like to make an attempt, because of board input in the past, to make the goals more quantitative and more evidence-based. So that would use various metrics and measurements or evidence collected to show that the goals, there was substantial progress made towards the goals were met. And the goals, as you can see, hopefully revolve around students and hopefully revolve around teaching and learning. You see goals like tax credit monies and things like that. However, we want to be able to draw a direct line to our students, which is kind of the priority. This last year, we saw very positive academic scores in our district. However, we do not want to sit on the status quo, and we want to have some simplicity and some focus to our goals. So although we focus on the whole system, there were some academic areas that we jumped out to us that we wanted to focus on, and I'll go through that in just a second. There would be strategies put in place to meet these goals. These would just be kind of statements. Goals would be held by various people in all our organization, like we've told you. And each goal of the strategic plan, as you saw down here, each of these goals would account for 20% of the pay for performance that we've talked about in the past, and that would be up to the board to determine if those goals were met or not, like we've recently done. So if you look at the left under student success, as a cabinet, we've talked about some of these areas, and that's why I'm bringing it to the board for some input. We noticed that there was 3 areas that we've really wanted to focus on. That doesn't mean that we neglect the other areas. However, there's an intentional focus on, for example, raising 8th grade math scores, and that's come up with this board at various times. The 11th grade composite ACT score is critical. The importance of an ACT score to almost be a predictor of college and career readiness and to get students ready for college, although not every student goes to college, is a really significant score, and we have 1 year worth of ACT. And then 3rd grade reading, there's been a lot of emphasis by the state legislature and in research about the level that students are reading at in the 3rd grade, and our 3rd grade reading scores were very high. However, when you look at some of our districts, they were maybe a little lower than a few of our surrounding districts. Under employee excellence, with some space there, one of the elephants in the room is our employee retention rate. We know nationally there is a teacher shortage. We know statewide there's a teacher shortage. In fact, when I drive through areas within our community, there's a shortage of workers just about in every industry, it seems. However, there's got to be a way we can increase our retention rate of our employees, and so we would implement various strategies to compare did we retain more employees this year compared to a metric from last year. Included in an employee excellence goal, you could see a second goal that would monitor our for example, our professional learning community. Are those effective? Those are new this year. How can we monitor their effectiveness? And that could be through evidence and through survey data. And then our new evaluation instrument that we have for teachers and leaders could also be a part of that employee excellence goal. Is that helping us get to our effectiveness project? The third one, safe environment and culture. Again, with these focused on students, we can reduce, and how do we reduce our referrals to the office across all of our schools? I would also include a new one in there that's on everyone's mind is new initiatives and programs that we'll put into place to enhance our school security. I think that's obviously paramount to all the things that we're doing. Under effective operations, resources, and systems, we've seen a lot of success with some of our projects being funded by the School Facilities Board. And what that means is we do not then have to pay for that project. And I think we can definitely increase that. And we've really worked hard to continue to increase that. And that frees up other monies for us in other areas in our creativity and having as much of a robust budget as we can. And then finally, under community partnerships, the example I put down there would be to increase our tax credit revenues, our extracurricular tax credit revenues. They were pretty high this year, but we can do better. We can increase those. I would also include something in there such as our financial fact seminars that Mrs. Rodriguez presents to the community. to continue to educate them, as well as continuing to be visible not only at our schools but in the community to build those partnerships. How can we increase our business partner breakfast so that we get more partners at the table? So with that, I just kind of open it up to the board, President Hatcher, because I want to get some input and thoughts. If I'm getting close, the idea would be to massage these kind of like we did with the pro statement that we're bringing to you tonight, and the format would look different than this, but for simplicity's sake, I put it here. But to bring it back to the next board for an approval or for the board to continue to discuss it.
So, Dr. Monroe, since we have two people on the phone, can we start with the folks on the phone and let everybody take a turn so that we all hear what everyone has to say before the board, adds to their comments? But what I want to ask you is, do you want to respond after every board member makes a comment, or do you want to wait till all five of us say our piece about student success and then respond?
Yeah, I'll just make some notes and I'll let you guys speak, and then I'll see if I can respond or add some color to things.
Okay. So, Member Brown and Member Walker, we'll start with you so that we don't forget about you, okay? Member Brown, do you want to start with comments or questions about student success?
Okay. We're working off both the single-page draft and then the 5 pages that was sent out to us that expanded on those items, right?
Correct. Those pages I added just so you guys had kind of the umbrella of some of the language of the broad strategic plan priorities. So correct.
And then eventually this document, you'll merge these 2 documents together for an updated draft, correct?
Yes, I would bring something back that looks a lot cleaner and would be a combination of all of these. Yes, that would look a lot cleaner.
Okay, all right. Then on the student success piece, and I've seen some of the other neighboring districts have this where they get specific on percentages of increase or percentages of academic gains. I know in the past we've not included that in a goal, but as a goal is something to strive for, I would feel we should put some sort of a number there. If we're going to increase by 2%, by 3%, by 5%, and it's okay if we don't hit that, but we need to have a target number. We need to have something that we're striving for, and maybe not be so generic in our verbiage.
Okay, so right now we'll just listen to everyone instead of debating one another, okay, so we can get all ideas on the table. Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah. So, Member Brown, when you're finished, will you tell us that you're finished, and then same thing, Member Walker, so that we'll know?
Okay, then I'm finished with student success at the moment.
Thank you. Member Walker?
I think just to add on to what Member Brown said as far as demonstrate academic gains in the following areas, are those gains in comparison to how our students did from a class year over year, or in comparison to neighboring districts?
It would be the end of the year results in student success from this past year's group.
Okay. That was the only clarification I needed. I know we tend to be higher than all of our neighboring districts in all of these already. But I think comparing ourselves to ourselves year after year would be a good plan as well. That's all I had for that area, was a clarity on comparison there for those gains.
Thank you. Member
My turn?
Busby.
I tend to agree with Scott's observation with student success. I think we would be better served if there was actually a percentage number attached to it because it gives us something concrete to be striving for, because a .001 increase is an increase in achievement, but it doesn't present the same picture as, oh, overall we had a 3% increase. Those are two totally different kinds of increases. And it's a goal to shoot for. If we don't make whatever the percentage is, that's okay. It's an opportunity for us to grow and identify where we may have fallen short. Yeah, and for right now, that's all I have on that one.
Go ahead.
Let's see. I definitely agree with the areas that you're wanting to focus on, the 8th grade math and the ACT and the 3rd grade reading. Those are all really good. I would caution that we'd have to really be thinking about how this percentage increase would work. What kind of percentage would we be talking about? Would it be school-wide? Would it be district-wide? Would it be grade-wide? Would it be teacher-wide? So we'd have to really figure out where this percentage thing, which one are we talking about? Because there's so many different levels here that we'd have to really be careful about what we're going to do to, make sure that we are actually hitting some goal. What would that goal be? Where's the level? Where would we draw that off? So that's the only thing I had to add right now.
And what I would like to add is, I'll talk to test scores in a second. Graduation rates, I would like to see something about graduation rates, because I don't believe a high-stakes test is a be-all, end-all. So for me, graduation rates, I think about what Carrie McCullough said maybe in the last meeting, where she talked about special ed and gen ed collaboration. And she said something about, better collaboration and working together for those students. So in the student success piece, I think it's smart to include, maybe even talk to Carrie again and flesh that out a little bit more and see exactly what she was talking about. But to me, that sounds like a good idea. Now I'll talk about test scores. Some of you have already heard this before from me. High-stakes tests is simply not simply, but it's a snapshot of performance. It does not account for situations out of a teacher's control, let alone it's out of the superintendent's control. And what I mean by that, and I can give you an example. I had a student that came in and was done with his test in 10 minutes. And I couldn't have read that test in 10 minutes, let alone this guy reading that test and taking that test. So some kids have test anxiety. So I just have a problem with using a high-stakes test as a be-all, end-all. I don't have a problem with accountability, but what I would rather see is growth. And that's demonstrated by formative and summative assessments. You give a benchmark at the beginning of the year, you give a benchmark at the end of the year, and there are a series of benchmarks throughout the year. And so that demonstrates growth. So again, I'm not opposed to using assessments as a mean of measurement. I just have a problem with the high-stakes test as the be-all, end-all. So that's my 2 cents on student success.
I would, go along with that. I was going to ask, when we think about those percentages of increase, that part too. Where are we going to be measuring this from? Is it going to be just that high-stakes test, or is it going to be something that a teacher can bring and show? And again, then we'd have to talk about teacher level, school level, district level. But yeah, definitely different forms of assessment to get these shown besides obviously the ACT.
And then I'll say one more thing about tests, because I just remembered something. I saw a graph not too long ago when I was looking at high-stakes test scores. What I was actually looking at was test scores and tracking test scores for about the last 10 years. I was tracking our district as opposed to competitive districts, and then, of course, the state. And we're always above the state of Arizona, so I don't pay attention to that. But what I noticed was the graph ran like this. Then it took a dive. Well, where that dive was when we got rid of Ames and put in AZ Merit. And so if somebody doesn't realize that, they're looking at this thing and saying, whoa, what's this nosedive all about? And it's about a new test. And so now we've had another new test for our kids this past year. So, if you use high-stakes tests, you have to think about all of that stuff behind it and not use it as penalty. And then one last thing I'll say. I have PV's, Scottsdale's, and Deer Valley's performance goals in front of me. And Deer Valley is the only one that quantifies, but what they quantify is interesting. They talk about reducing a gap between general ed and either language, arts, or math, and one of the subpopulations, special ed, EL, or ethnicity, which tells me that that's an issue for them. So it's not, they weren't even talking about raising scores necessarily. They were talking about comparing subgroups to the general ed population, which is interesting if you all think that's needed in our district. I don't know that it is, but
Can I add something to that? I actually have a copy of Deer Valley's goals for everybody. Don't know if you're interested, but here. And they specifically stated in here under one of their priorities, 20 of the 40 schools will increase ELA and math proficiency by 3% on the state assessment. And a question that I've got about the state assessment test, from year to year, it's different kids in any given grade. And so I guess it's somewhat of an anomaly. I mean, you've got, kids, this batch of 50 kids in whatever grade, well, they move up to the next grade, so when you're not even matching kids to kids. So is there a way to factor in using a cohort so we can see how this group of 50 kids is doing as they go along? Because if all we're going to do is look at, a benchmark or a state assessment, we're really not seeing how a given group is improving. And if we see how that given group is improving, that is a measuring stick for how they're being taught and the materials that are being used.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm not an educator, but this is like my observation of this over many, many years, that the state as a whole is missing the mark, because you're saying, okay, let's see how you improve from last year to this next year. Okay, but the kids that are in third grade aren't the same third graders, so it's not fair. It's like comparing apples and oranges.
And that's the benefit of using the growth measure for the same year. You give them really and truly, what I like is the exact same benchmark coming in, the exact same benchmark right before they leave, then that measures growth. But you bring up a good point, and that's what got on my radar a couple years ago about 8th grade math. And so I was wondering, I noticed in our district, and I was paying attention only to our district, the 8th grade math scores were bad. So I thought, it's either we've got some bad teachers teaching 8th grade math consistently, or it's a tough year, like algebra is tough and just everybody does poorly, nosedives in that topic. So I started tracking cohorts. We had a really good matrix, and I was able to look at that 8th grade group and see how they did in 9th, 10th, 11th, because I wanted to know what I was just talking about. And I really don't think it's, I don't think it's a function of the teachers. I think it's a function of the subject, because then when I looked at other districts, I could see they were having the same thing. So it's a really good point that you bring up, to be able to track cohorts.
The whole point of having a goal is it's a tool for growth. And if it's not structured in the right way, in essence, all we're going to do is go through the motion, and it's truly not going to be as beneficial as it could be. And with this Deer Valley, the thing that really stood out is they went into great detail to show this is where we are today. And this is, all the stars aligning and everything being perfect. This is where we want to be. So it's, in black and white, we're starting here, we want to be here. Let's see where we fall at the end of the year. And I would like to see something that in these goals, when you bring back a final draft, because this is really a tool. I don't look at it as something to say, oh, gee, you didn't do this one, so there's a check mark. This is about the success of this district and being able to provide the best quality product that we can possibly deliver. And the only way we can do that is if we step up our game and we raise the bar on what our expectation is and how we're going to achieve these goals, with very specifics. And, I was very impressed with what Deer Valley did, because they went through very specific, this is how we're going to get there, and these are the tools we're going to use to assess it.
And another thing, if we do something like that, is another thing to consider is that if we have a lot of new teachers, especially in 8th grade math, 3rd grade reading, the things that you're offering for us to measure your goals by, I'd be curious to know, are those new teachers? Because if they're new and have never taught these topics, I wouldn't expect those kids to necessarily have the high test scores. And so that's where the PLCs come in mentoring, because, a seasoned teacher knows where kids typically have problems because they've been through the curriculum before, and so a new teacher isn't going to know that. And I wouldn't want kids held against, well, kids wouldn't be, but I wouldn't want a teacher penalized for that, and I wouldn't want the superintendent penalized, because I just don't think that's fair. It's not a fair factor, but it would be a factor. Members Brown and Walker, do you have anything else you want to add? Did we put you to sleep?
Member Brown, are you still there?
Just a comment, if I may. I heard most of what Member Hatcher was saying. I understand her concern with maybe some of our newer teachers, but I'm also hoping that our early release Wednesdays and being able to have some development within our grades and within our subject teachers would help. Obviously, we'll have a mix of veteran teachers and new teachers, and hopefully the new teachers can learn on some of our early release days to be able to maybe see where they need to emphasize for the upcoming tests. And I, this changed this now. This is our third test in about 5 years, our third version of the test. And even though I know that we'll be looking at trends, it's still, comparing two different styles of the test. And I understand that, and I think all of us on the board understands that. And unless the state, as long as they keep the test the same for the next 3 or 4 years, and then we'll be able to glean some good data off of that, I think we also need to realize that that's still a work in progress from the state side with this assessment test. And, all of this would be obviously up for discussion moving forward as we're working. We would get the update in December. How of our goals, how are we doing to achieve our goals? And if we need to then refine, by then we'll have almost a semester worth of the early release with the professional development days, and we'll get some good feedback there with, okay, we're working with the newer teachers for the math test that's coming up, or for, what are we going to do as we start the spring semester. So I think there's a lot of good points, and I think we're all on the same page. We're coming at it maybe from a different angle, each one of us, the 5 of us, or the 6 of us, including Dr. Monroe. But I think we're on the right track here. We just need to refine it a little bit.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Member Walker, did you want to add anything?
Oh, just that all of these are very difficult to put in. I mean, I speak for the 8th grade math. I know with COVID and that class, I mean, they probably had at least 3 to 5 teachers in 1 year each class. So it's hard to then put that on the superintendent as well. To me, some of the student success also links to, having the staff to have that be more consistent for them. And like Member Brown said, the test changing also makes it difficult to compare, which now I'm thinking you almost have to compare to how you're doing to neighboring districts if you're going to put a number to it like some members are requesting.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Both of you are educators. Well, everybody here is an educator, except me. If the state assessment, the high-stakes tests, are not identified as part of a district goal, will that minimize the importance or the emphasis for the preparation? Because, typically in any kind of a situation, if somebody's told, this has this intrinsic value, then you approach it differently than, you just got to do it and get through it. There's 2 different, approaches to it. So, this is just a question because I don't know. I mean, you guys are both educators, so would that kind of step back the importance, that a teacher would place on a high-stakes test?
Well, I don't think so, because from what I've seen, it goes into so many different things. I mean, the teacher performance is part of it. The parents get the reports, so there's a lot of different pieces to it. So I don't think that if somebody looked at this and said, well, the AASA is not being considered, so I'm not even going to worry about this, I don't think they would, because there's so many other things that it does go into. And the kids take it, most of them, take it very seriously because the teachers take it seriously. And so I think, and the parents take it seriously. So I don't think so. That's just my humble opinion there.
I agree with that, because when I was teaching, to be honest with you, I couldn't have told you what the superintendent goals were. I didn't have a clue. I just knew what my goals were for my kids, and of course what the administration was pushing down to us. So, and teaching 3rd grade, that's the first year that's a high stakes year, because they had to pass that reading, or they had remedial stuff. So that was a big deal to a 3rd grade teacher. No, I really don't think it'd make a difference to a teacher.
I assume that the goals, they're the superintendent/district goals, that those goals will be communicated to the staff?
Correct.
Okay. So that's kind of what I was assuming. So if, as a teacher, you're not seeing this as a goal, does that change the focus?
And I would take a stab at answering that too. I think sometimes the standardized test almost becomes, for lack of a better term, the cleanest way. There's a lot of ways, we're taught as educators, you don't ever you don't ever identify a student by a test score because there's so much more than that. However, when you're talking about goals and such, I think growth is a good measure. Because there are other assessments. Good quality teachers, highly effective teachers can almost predict what that student is going to achieve on those assessments. But if you do a beginning of the year, test and a post test, sometimes you can get at what you're referring to, Janet. But I do think a lot of times goals are just the cleanest, even though there's a ton of variables when end of the year assessments are used. I don't think it's the most accurate, but I think you see districts like Deer Valley and other districts and people like that, and kind of like I put on here, is sometimes it's easier to use one measure, even though it's a different set of kids. There's no data that's completely clean. There's just no data that's completely clean. Even if you follow that group of cohort kids, they're going to take a different assessment next year that throws off the validity and reliability a little bit from the year before. So I just think sometimes a lot of districts default to that standardized assessment, but I think you can get at it a lot of different ways with assessments that are given in the classroom or portfolio evidence base of things that the kids are doing to show growth.
When you're talking about, here's a portfolio of said students' achievements, does that become more subjective as opposed to objective?
The challenge in education is it's never completely objective. Although people want it to be, this is a social science. We're dealing with individuals. We're dealing with brain development. We're dealing with, I woke up and I'm having a terrible day. There's just no way to completely quantify it. For all the scientists in the world, it would be great if we could. It would be great if we could, just say, hey, you're going to grow by 5% and here's the end all. But there's just so many variables to account for, so there's always some subjectivity. However, when you have a preponderance of evidence, like with our new evaluation system, you try to have enough evidence and proof to show the growth that the student is gaining. And a standardized test score can be a picture of that.
On the one hand, I totally agree with, a standardized test is, it's changed so many times and it doesn't give an accurate picture. But the other side of that same coin, as these students go through school and, get to high school and, even go into college, a standardized test is part of the makeup of the program. And, part of our job as a school district is to prepare these kids as they move forward. So totally eliminating a high-stakes test from a goal, I'm not sure that's, I'd be 100% with that. But I definitely think that if we could attach some kind of a way to quantify student success, that would help the district as a whole in many different ways.
Yeah, it's tricky. Definitely tricky. Did you want to add anything, comments
No.
now about what any of us? Okay.
No, that's okay.
All right, so we'll move on to number 2, employee excellence. Member Walker, let's start with you on employee excellence. You have anything to say or comment on?
I don't really have a comment on this one. I feel like this one was had a lot of valid points as far as just reducing the amount of vacancies compared to the previous year. And then also providing the mentorship and support on the larger document. I think that's going to be key for retainment as well. So I kind of think that has two parts as far as lessening the amount of vacancies and then retainment. Don't like to see the revolving door with positions here.
Are you finished? Member Walker, are you finished?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Member Brown?
I I would agree with Member Walker. I like at least the breakdown on the larger document, the 3 bullet points under employee excellence. I think we could also include, the stipends that we give for masters and doctorates, the stipends that we give for our long-term employees, teachers and staff. So we can tweak that, maybe add a couple of more items. Definitely think we're going in the right direction with that. We need to be proud of all of our employees, classified, certified, everybody that's in one of our buildings, and we need to really show that having good bullet points that we can lean on to support our employees. And that's it.
Thank you.
Me again?
Okay. I think we need to have some sort of mechanism to track employee satisfaction. We can retain employees. That doesn't necessarily mean they're happy. And if, the whole point is employee excellence, to me that says, they excel in every way. They're very happy in their workplace. So, the workplace environment is part of this. We need to be able to track somehow, are we meeting the needs of our staff? Are they able to, get the resources or whatever? That's part of this. The other thing is we have vacancies. Everybody has vacancies. But, there's certain areas, maybe it's math or maybe it's special ed, but there are certain areas that I know special ed has consistently for the last year or two been an area where we've really struggled. So perhaps picking some of those areas where we have historically, I don't want to use the word deficient because that's not appropriate. We've not been able to appropriately staff it. Maybe a goal is to be able to say, we're going to have, 85 or 90% of vacancies in said subject area or department filled. We can follow it, by semester, by quarter, by whatever, to see how we're doing. Because again, the whole point of a goal is to help us grow. And we need to have the mechanism to track so that we know how we're doing. And if we don't have a stated mechanism to track, then we're just kind of, we're losing ground.
I get to say in this one, she stole my answer. Because actually I was, when I was reading this, I was looking at this and thinking about that, the spotlight on reducing the vacancies, but that also came to mind that there should be something in place to see how we're doing during the year. Some sort of, a survey that we can put out, and make sure that it's anonymous, but ask the questions about how is your job? Are you satisfied? Where are the problems? And you do it kind of like the tests, the benchmark tests. Do it a few times a quarter. See where are the deficit areas, and then address those deficit areas so that when you do it again, are those numbers going in the right direction? So I was kind of thinking the same thing as far as having that be part of this. These other things are great. the mentorship, like Scott said, the stipends, things that are incentivizing the people to come here and stay here. But we should kind of keep our finger to the pulse of how they're doing as they're here too. So that's my part on that one.
And I agree with what everyone has said too. And when it comes to employee satisfaction, I would like for the district to ask the boots on the ground what's working, what's not working, what do they suggest, not just to reduce it to a complaint session, but give the employees an opportunity to say, you know, this really isn't working very well, but I have an idea. And so that they know that they can communicate and be listened to. And I know they're not going to come to you and do all that, but they'll go to their supervisor. Whether we can do it or not is another thing, but at least listen to them. They're the boots on the ground. They know.
For employees to feel that they're heard is huge to employee satisfaction. And actually, the early releases on Wednesday will be a great opportunity for what you're talking about. That's a perfect opportunity to be able to what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah. Did you want to add anything, Dr. Monroe, to any of us or respond to any of us?
No, I appreciate the input. I would say just continue.
Okay.
I'll take a lot of copious notes and listen back to the minutes and all of that jazz.
Okay.
My writing's getting smaller as I'm filling it in.
Okay, priority 3, safe environment and culture. Member Brown, you want to start us?
Okay, thank you. I think the one area, obviously, coming out of the pandemic, and we've talked about this, about our students maybe having a tougher time getting back into the classrooms, socializing, mental health issues, whatever. I think we all need to think in that area with our staff. Staff also went through COVID as wage earners, as parents, and I think we need to make sure we have that opportunity to give them for their not social support, but obviously emotional, mental health support to get the staff back up at full speed, to say full speed, because that will also, I think, carry over into the classrooms and give our students an even better learning environment. Obviously, the past is also something that we.
We're
Member Brown, you cut out.
Oh no.
The last thing we heard was obviously the past, and then we lost you.
Okay, am I back now?
Yes.
Okay. The past, what happened a month ago in Texas at the school, the safety, the physical safety of our facilities is still also very important, and to make sure all of our staff and students are aware of all the different procedures. So I that's something that's, unfortunately when it comes to the highlights or to the top of the news, we all need to step back and take a look. Is there something we need to do differently to ensure safety on our campuses, the physical safety from something that might happen? So I think those two things we need to be cognizant about, and I think that's all I have at the moment.
Thank you, Member Walker.
That's Brown.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I was thanking him and then Member Walker.
Okay.
Those were actually kind of the 2 points that stood out to me as well as a focus. I think the social emotional support is huge for students, staff, and families. I do like that we have like at the STMS, the second step, and then all the different clubs that we do have as well. Figuring out a way to offer that for staff. For me, a lot of that probably just takes money, which where the override could probably help build programs around that. And then also just the actual physical security as well is a huge concern in this day. And I think just having good communication about protocols for each campus, especially out to with the staff and with our families, is very important.
Are you good?
That's it for me, yeah.
Thank you.
Of course, you know, physical and the emotional safety are two very, very important pieces. I think it would be very, very prudent, you know, this particular goal, more than any of the other ones, that there are very specific things outlined that the district is targeting as a goal for either the emotional or physical safety. You know, given the environment that our world exists in now, you know, our parents want to make sure that kids are going to be safe, both physically and emotionally at school. And so to create very specific details, what are we doing? And, you know, how are we going to achieve this? I think that is something, at the very least, we owe to this community. And I'm not saying that, you know, we have a huge problem. I'm just looking forward. And, you know, if I had a 6-year-old that I was going to be sending to school, you know, and it's my first child, I would be a nervous wreck. You know, is something going to happen? What is this school district have in place? And to see it in writing as a stated goal for the district goes a long way. But along with that, it's great to list, you know, the bullet points. This is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to achieve it. How are we going to measure it? You know, it goes back to, we need that yardstick so we can actually see, are we being successful? Because to state a goal that you can't or are lacking a way to measure it, it's not really a beneficial goal. It's just a statement. Okay.
All right. When I was reading this, I kind of hearkened back to my visit at Sonoran Trails a couple months ago. When I went there, Ms. Sereno mentioned to me that the counselors were overrun there with kids that are in these crises, and the stress that's put on them, but wanting to help these kids. I think that if we're going to address this area, then we definitely need to have the counselors involved in it somehow. And I know you can't pull magic out of hats, but more support for these counselors so that they can deal with these people, these kids that are in these crises as they're handling and dealing with them. But then also, again, going to what Janet is saying, use that information about how are we addressing this. Can we talk to our counselors and say, yeah, there's less kids coming in, or do we talk to the kids and say, as the support that you're getting from the counselors and the teachers and second step and all these other things, is it helping you feel more safe? Is it helping you emotionally? And then of course there's the physical stuff that we all talked about. But I think that if we're going to address this, that's the area that needs to be really targeted, especially in these upper grades where they're having so much trouble. So that's my part on that.
And I just have a curiosity question, so now I'm going to be down in the weeds. When the schools do their drills, do they still do drills where they might have yellow tape off? They might tape off so that when you walk out of your classroom, you're accustomed to making a left, and this time you have to go right because okay. Yeah. And then the very last drill that I had was really interesting. And they did a fire drill first, and about a minute later put us in a lockdown. And we were confused, and they did it on purpose, and it was excellent. And, you know, and I'm hoping the district still does those kind of things.
Yes, good question, President Hatcher. In fact, we just spoke with the principals today. We're changing the way we do fire drills, and Mr. Dolezal's kind of rolling out some of those changes, just so that we can make sure that we're on the most current best practices that are happening. And so there's even going to be some things in place that feel backwards to us, but that's the reality we're living in, and so we'll be rolling all of that out to the teachers here very soon, as soon as they come back.
Speaking to Jeff's point about the counselors being overrun, to address that, would it be prudent to take a step back and first ask the question, what's causing these referrals? Because you can't fix the problem if, you know, it's easy to say, well, instead of having, you know, 25 referrals, we only want to have 19. But if we don't know why there's referrals, we can't fix a problem, because I'm guessing some of those referrals, there's some other underlying issue that we may not know about. And so, you know, that's just sort of a kind of question that's, maybe we need to go back that far to make this a truly effective goal.
Did you want to add or ask
No,
us
no,
anything?
good points made. No, I'll continue to listen.
Okay. All right, y'all. Goal 4, effective operations, resources, and systems. I think Member Walker first this time. I'm trying to. Member Walker, number 4. Operations.
This is one I feel like we've been doing a really good job on. As a parent, I feel like I've had more information, consistent information from the district than I have in years past. So seeing this continue to be a focus, I feel like the social media stuff was under maybe employee, I can't remember which, but I think it could also be, just the previous one on 3, that it could be moved in under here as well as a form of communication. And just being more effective. I think that could be added into the staff.
You're breaking up.
That last part I missed.
Even just for families,
Member Walker,
it seems. Yes?
you broke up after it would be more effective. That could be added.
If it, district, that'd just be something I would try to add into this area.
So, Member Walker, maybe you can email that to me, because it broke up at exactly the same spot as it did again.
Okay.
So,
Okay, will do.
Okay, Member Brown.
Thank you. I like the larger document where it breaks out the 5 bullet points. The original, the draft, to increase the amount of school facility board projects funded. I know Mr. Santina in the facilities department does a fantastic job, and he is always submitting, requests for everything to be repaired through SFB. But we really don't, using that, we really don't have any control over that. The facilities board's going to do what they do, and we have some projects I know Mr. Santina has put in several times that we still keep getting the no back from facilities board. So the larger document with the 5 bullet points, I think, is much more closer to what we need to have as that goal. And obviously, friendly website is important because so much of our information is out there on the website. And I think the easier we can make that or more user friendly, the better off it is for everybody involved. The rest of the other 4 bullet points I think are spot on. So I'm good with the larger document under this one. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Yeah, when I first read this, I kind of laughed to myself because, as Scott pointed out, we have zero control over school facilities board, and to identify that as a goal, it's more like cross your fingers and hope for the best, and so it's not fair to the superintendent to make that a goal because none of us can control it. I just, like with all of these goals, I like to see the details on, the specifics and the steps that we intend to take to achieve said goal and how we're going to measure it.
Not really too much to add to what everybody has already said. I think that just making sure that we are continually showing what we're doing, like Scott said, via the website, via updates about what they're doing for the maintenance and the projects that are going on, but also that last bullet point about the implementing a coordinated marketing plan that communicates to the public the strength of the district. That's key. That's part of what we're really trying to do here as far as getting kids in here, keeping kids here, keeping the families here. So just being able to show what's being done for that. So I'm good with those.
Nada. Number 5, community partnerships. Member Brown.
On community partnerships, I definitely think getting our message out to the several community organizations is important, will always be important. Getting out in front of the Chamber of Commerce and in front of the Kiwanis Club and the other groups that really support the district and our students, I think is the key to that. The more information we can get out to those groups, whether it's a monthly newsletter or we're sending them the news from the creek, that the newsletter that we put out, or just anything that we can increase that and highlight some of the programs we're doing at the elementary schools, at the middle school, and maybe we'll start to see some community groups that have members that want to get involved, and then that ties in having like a Tuesday morning reading group and have people come in and read to the kids, or there's always going to be something that we can do that maybe doesn't cost a ton of money, but gets the community involved on campus with our students. Because I think since COVID and that, I think that's a piece that we've had in the past that maybe we're missing now. And I don't know if we're able to incorporate our great PTO organizations to help get that message out also. Because I think the volunteers and the parents that work within those PTO organizations, they've made that commitment to do events or projects on campus for the kids. So I think that's a strong resource that we have that we can maybe even lean on a little bit to help bridge the gap into the community. And I think that's it for me.
Thank you. Member Walker?
I really like all of these bullet points. I think this is something Dr. Monroe's really shined in. Again, with Scott, I'd like to see maybe a few other events. I mean, the community breakfast partnerships have been amazing. I think we've had great turnout at those the past year. I know we've already are starting to plan the senior night at the football game, which I think is another great idea of ways to involve the community, besides just our parents that are involved. And then the goal of just increasing the tax credit revenue, I think is a great way to have actually something quantitative on there in a comparison from fiscal year 23 to 22. And that's it for me.
Thank you.
I think all of the bullet points are very worthy. My question is, how do we identify if, it's truly an effective and successful partnership? Do we have some way to have I hate to use this word, but to measure the effectiveness, to say the XYZ entity is one of our community partners is one thing, but does that partner actually see the partnership as a positive? And, if not, why? And what is it that we should or should not be doing, to improve the partnership? And, the community partnerships, I sort of feel like it involves the community at large because we are a small community and most of the businesses and entities that are up here are locally owned and locally operated. And so everybody is part of the community partnership. So, somehow that really needs to be incorporated. As far as the tax credit, this is just sort of an observation. I think it's great because tax credit has been a huge source of revenue. However, we've just increased the participation fees, and we're going to be asking the community to support an override. So, in two different ways, we've already asked for more money. So to identify this as a goal, is that, I don't know the answer to it, but I try to look at both sides, and it's like, okay, if I'm the community member with whatever number of kids in school, you've raised my fees for my kids to participate in whatever, and you're asking me to support an override. Now you want me to donate some more money to your school district. Will that be negatively taken by the community? And it's just a rhetorical question.
Well, let's see. I do think we need to make sure that we are continually reaching out to those groups that historically have maybe not gotten involved or not supported the district. Those folks that do vote no on the bonds and overrides, maybe reaching out to them to kind of show to them the importance of supporting the community, even if you don't have kids in this school, even if you never had kids in this school. So I think that something that shows that we are reaching out to those folks. Will we turn all those no's into yeses? Probably not, but I think that you still need to at least, put the information out there to them. So if you can show that we're doing that, that would be good. And then Dr. Monroe already mentioned the other two areas that I was going to mention, continuing those financial seminars. This district gets bashed all the time about that we're not being transparent, even though we are doing these things. So I hope that we will continue to do these things to show the community that we are being transparent in what we're doing financially, but also then reaching out to more and more of these businesses. So those areas he already mentioned. So I'm good with that.
I agree with what everyone said. So, do you have any comments, any final comments or anything?
No. I don't. That was a lot, but it was very, very good input, and I appreciate each one of you and your thoughtful preparation. Again, it's a privilege to work with a board that is so detail-oriented, that wants to do the best for our kids, because that's obviously where I am as well. So give me a few weeks here with school starting, and I'll do my best to massage some of this input and bring back a product. There was some common themes between all 5 board members that I heard, and we'll bring it back and we'll present it at the next meeting and see if we can.
May I make one more comment under community partnership?
Yes, go ahead.
I know one thing, and it may sound odd, but the high school homecoming parade, which we've had for years, I know has always been a sense of pride, I think, not only for the students, and as we incorporate the middle school and the elementaries and some of the different clubs, but I think the community also came out and supported that. I know, we didn't hold it during the COVID, but last year with it not being able to come together, I think there were some both community members and students that were disappointed in that. And if that's something that we can get back to as a partnership with the town of Cave Creek, I think that's something that's important for us and our kids to have that support and see that support from the community. The community gets to see the kids. It's kind of a win-win.
Yeah, what shut that down?
The cost.
Oh, the cost shut it down?
From what I understand, the cost for the police, it was going to be totally on us. And whatever expenses were involved, the town apparently said, okay, we're going to have a parade, it's all on you.
It's too bad, yeah, because... All right, good job, guys.
Can I add one other just clarifying question as well on that community partnerships? In the tax credit revenue, parents can use their $400 for a couple tax revenue for their student fees, where I think where this could actually link to the community partnership is all of our stakeholders that live in Cave Creek Carefree that actually don't have kids participating, since it is a one-for-one tax credit. I think maybe putting that message out there a little differently, you'd be able to see an increase. Because I mean, even with our surveys, we know our older generations actually really love supporting our schools. And I think information around this, for them, you could easily get an increase in your revenues there. And it's not going out to the families that are still already paying all the fees for participation at the school.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to number 5, if the board is good. Number 5, action consent. Is there a motion to approve action consent as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item 5, action consent as presented. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. Motion carries. Number 5, action consent is approved as presented. Number 5.5 was pulled, so 5.5, purchases exceeding $100,000 for 2022-2023, presented by Ms. Marcy Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Hatcher, members of the board. Attached is a list of the vendors that the district may have a singular cumulative purchase over $100,000 for the fiscal year 22-23. This list is brought to the board every year. It is a requirement of our audit and the USFR through the Auditor General that we ask the board for approval for anything over $100,000. Although you will see the majority of these vendors do have RFPs or co-ops that we purchase them through. So I move that the governing board approve the singular or cumulative purchase for over $100,000 for any vendor listed on the 2022-2023 fiscal year as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I just had a couple of questions on this list. Baker Copeland is listed as, there's an RFP. What's that an RFP for?
Member Busby, members of the board, the RFP would be to use that. It's probably an RFP from another school district that we are able to ride on. It is not an RFP that is from our district.
Well, it says on here that it's construction, so what?
So this is a list of possible vendors. So there was a point in time where we used Baker Copeland for a renovation project from the SFB funded project. So anticipating that we are going to get approved for some of these renovation projects that we have asked the SFB for, we're putting this on the list. We may use them or we may not use them. But we are being proactive and asking for your approval in advance.
So they're on this list, you know, like Baker Copeland, GCON, and there was another one on here listed for construction. They're
Pueblo
on this list
Mechanical.
so that they could be approved?
So that if we need to use their services and their services exceed $100,000, we have your approval to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I understand what you're doing, but it's sort of misleading when you have on this list an entity for construction and it shows that there's an RFP for $164,000. Looking at this, it leads somebody to come to the conclusion that, oh, Cave Creek's got a pending project for $164,000.
I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question also about there's the solar things that are on here, Bank of America, JP Morgan, and Pinnacle. Are these all part of that $6.2 million that didn't show up in our audit?
No, ma'am. These are leases that were entered into several years ago.
Yeah.
When we did some energy savings renovations and some solar installations. So they will continue for the next several years. We entered into multiple year lease agreements.
Okay, thank you.
So, Marcy, just for the record, so the board, we can clear up some of the things that are maybe not so clear, like Member Busby's pointing out. Why do school districts bring this list to the governing board for approval on a yearly basis? Why is this operating practice?
This is a requirement that we have through the Auditor General's USFR requirements that we bring purchasing over $100,000, although we are in compliant with procurement rules because we have RFPs that we ride on or co-op agreements. It is still important that governing board understands we will be spending $100,000 or more, and that's a requirement that the law has set upon us.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, it's been moved and seconded to approve item 5.5 as presented. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, that was unanimous. Motion carries. Item 5.5 is approved as presented. Item 6.6, old business, 6.1, revision to fiscal year 2022-2023 schedule for business and work study governing board meetings, presented by Dr. Court Monroe.
Yes, President Hatcher, members of the board, administration would recommend that the governing board take the following action. Move that the governing board approve the revision of the fiscal year 22-23 board meetings in moving the October 10th board meeting, which is a Monday, to Tuesday, October 11th, for the sole reason of I will be out of the country and returning. And so administration would recommend approval of moving that board meeting one night later.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, it's been moved and seconded to approve item 6.1, revision to fiscal year 2022-2023 schedule for business and work study governing board meetings as presented. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. The motion carries. Item 6.1 is approved as presented. Number 7, new business, 7.1, to consider, discuss, amend if desired, and, if deemed advisable, to adopt a resolution approving the governing board's argument in support of the special maintenance and operation budget override election, presented by Ms. Marcy Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. In accordance with statute, the governing board shall submit a pro statement for the informational pamphlet for the override. We have brought draft pro statements to the governing board the last couple of meetings, and you have had very spirited conversations about the language that you would like to have in the pro statement with the governing board's name attached to it. So this evening we have brought back the changes that the governing board suggested that we make at the last meeting. Upon approval of this, a resolution then will be sent to our attorney, and that pro statement then will be sent on to the Maricopa County Superintendent of Public Instruction's office, and they will include it in the pamphlet. So I move that the governing board consider, discuss, amend, if desired or deemed advisable, to adopt the resolution approving the governing board's argument in support of the special maintenance and operation budget override election as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I love it. I wouldn't change a word now.
I like it too. Member Walker, Member Brown, do y'all have comments or questions? We don't want to leave you out.
None for me.
Member Brown?
None for me. No, it looks like all the changes were made accordingly, and if we're under the 200 words, then I think we're good to go.
Member Busby?
No comment.
All righty. Okay. It has been moved and seconded to adopt the resolution approving the governing board's argument in support of the special maintenance and operating budget override election as presented. Let me do a roll call vote on that. Member Brown, let's start with you.
Aye.
Member Walker?
Aye.
Member Busby?
Aye.
I'm an aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 7.1 is approved as presented.
President Hatcher, members of the board, let me just say this was a labor of love. We brought a starter statement a few months back. The board really was very thoughtful, beat it up quite a bit. We tried to bring back your feedback. I'm proud of the statement. I'm even more proud that the board has supported this override effort 5-0. I think that that is a very strong statement. And so thank you for your approval, and we'll move forward.
Thank you. Number 8, future agenda items, none. Number 9, upcoming calendar events. 9.1, presented by Dr. Court Monroe.
President Hatcher, members of the board, as the board knows, we'll be at Kiwanis on Wednesday morning. If you're available, stop by. We'd love to say hi to you. Maybe you can dunk one of our principals. That's always fun. The district office, the week of July 24th, will be back open 7:30 to 4. I believe we have 1 or 2 more weeks of the 4/10s that we're working. And August 1st, circle that on your calendar. That's the first day of school. The buses are rolling, and we are back in school. And then, as mentioned before, September 12th, if you're so inclined, will be the first Golf the District put on by CCUEF. If you don't play golf or you're not interested, you can pass along that flyer, come and play golf with us, and it goes towards a very good purpose in helping our teachers and students.
Thank you. Number 10, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned.